So we're going to work on using the contrast and contradiction signposts with the text. When we're reading this text and a character says or does or feels something that's the opposite or that contradicts what they've done in the past or what you do in that situation or what the other characters or people might do, we're going to stop and ask ourselves, why is the character doing or feeling that? And then we're going to make an inference or prediction based on the answer to the question, why are they doing that? This is the story Thank You, Ma'am by Langston Hughes. And it's a story about a boy who tries to steal a purse from a woman. If you'll follow along, I'll read it to you out loud. She was a large woman with a large purse that had everything in it but hammer and nails. It had a long strap, and she carried it slung across her shoulder. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and she was walking alone when a boy ran up behind her and tried to snatch her purse. The strap broke with the single tug the boy gave it from behind. But the boy's weight and the weight of the purse combined caused him to lose his balance, so instead of taking off full blast as he had hoped, the boy fell on his back on the sidewalk and his legs flew up. The large woman simply turned around and kicked him right square in his blue jean sitter. Then she reached down, picked the boy up by his shirt front, and shook him until his teeth rattled. After that, the woman said, "Pick up my pocketbook, boy, and give it here." She still held him, but she bent down enough to permit him to stoop and pick up her purse. Then she said, "Now ain't you ashamed of yourself?" Firmly gripped by his shirt front, the boy said, "Yes'm." The woman said, "What did you want to do it for?" The boy said, "I didn't aim to." She said, "You a lie." By that time, 2 or 3 people passed, stopped, turned to look, and some stood watching. "If I turn you loose, will you run?" asked the woman. "Yes'm," said the boy. "Then I won't turn you loose," said the woman. She did not release him. "I'm very sorry, lady, I'm sorry," whispered the boy. "Mm-hmm. And your face is dirty. I got a great mind to wash your face for you. Ain't you got nobody home to tell you to wash your face?" "No'm," said the boy. "Then it will get washed this evening," said the large woman, starting up the street, dragging the frightened boy behind her. I'm going to stop here because as I'm reading, I've been alert for contrasts and contradictions, and when I spot one, I want to pause and ask myself, why would the character act this way? And at this point, I am surprised that the woman does what she does. Imagine if someone tried to steal something of mine and I caught him. I don't think my first idea would be to take him home and wash his face. She's acting in a way that contrasts with what I would expect or what I would do. So I'm going to ask myself, why? I'd expect her to haul him off to the police station or call 911 or call for help. But she does the opposite. She takes him home to help him wash his face. Why would she do this? I have to say I'm not sure. He's already said he doesn't have someone at home to tell him to wash his face, so maybe she's thinking his mother doesn't take good care of him, and maybe she's a little worried about him. But I'm going to keep on reading, but I am going to put a note here, a contrast and contradiction, and I'm trying to think of the answer why she would do that. He looked as if he were 14 or 15, frail and willow wild, in tennis shoes and blue jeans. The woman said, "You ought to be my son. I would teach you right from wrong. Least I can do right now is to wash your face. Are you hungry?" That does provide me a little more information. Maybe she's really identifying as a mother and looking at someone who needs mothering. So she said, "Are you hungry?" "No'm," said the boy being dragged. "I just want you to turn me loose." "Was I bothering you when I turned that corner?" "No'm." "But you put yourself in contact with me," said the woman. "If you think that that contact is not going to last a while, you got another thought coming. When I get through with you, sir, you are going to remember Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones." Sweat popped out on the boy's face and he began to struggle. Mrs. Jones stopped, jerked him around in front of her, put a half Nelson about his neck, and continued to drag him up the street. When she got to her door, she dragged the boy inside, down a hall, and into a large kitchenette furnished room at the rear of the house. She switched on the light and left the door open. The boy could hear other roomers laughing and talking in the large house. Some of their doors were open too, so he knew he and the woman were not alone. The woman still had him by the neck in the middle of her room. She said, "What is your name?" "Roger," answered the boy. "Then, Roger, you go to that sink and wash your face," said the woman, whereupon she turned him loose at last. Roger looked at the door, looked at the woman, looked at the door, and went to the sink. I'll stop here again because I've noticed the character acting in a way that surprised me. And so we're going to ask, why is he doing that? Earlier, the boy, Roger, said that he would run if she let him loose. He said, "Yes'm." And now he has the choice to run, and he doesn't. The door's open. He can run right out of it. Instead, he chooses to do what she asked him to do. And the question we need to ask ourselves when we see a contrast or contradiction like this is, why is the character acting this way? I'm going to ask you to pause and think about it. Why do you think he's acting this way? Then resume. Maybe you said he didn't run because he was scared of her. And there's some evidence in the text for that. After all, she already had him in a half Nelson, and she's a large woman who's pretty much physically dragged him home. So maybe he's scared, or maybe he really just does want to wash his face. Maybe some warm water would feel good. Maybe he doesn't have anyone to take care of him. Maybe he's thinking that she's being nice to him. He's not. And if he continues to follow her directions, maybe she'll continue being nice to him. Let's leave that and keep going. "Let the water run until it gets warm," she said. "Here's a clean towel." "You're going to take me to jail?" asked the boy, bending over the sink. That makes me think maybe he is scared of her. "Not with that face, I would not take you nowhere," said the woman. "Here I am trying to get home to cook me a nice bite to eat, and you snatch my pocketbook. Maybe you ain't been to your supper either, late as it is. Have you?" "There's nobody home at my house," said the boy. "Then we'll eat," said the woman. "I believe you're hungry, or been hungry, to try and snatch my pocketbook." Wow, wait a sec. Here's another contrast and contradiction, sort of. I mean, not only would I not take the boy home to wash his face, I definitely wouldn't then give him dinner in addition. And so, for me, it seems kind of like a contrast and contradiction, although I'm starting to think that maybe she's the kind of woman who does really nice things to kids, even though they've tried to steal from her. But I still might note it as a contrast and contradiction. So I'm going to put a second sticky note here because now she's doing something that I wouldn't do. She's feeding the boy who tried to rob her, not just washing his face, but giving him food too. And I think that's something most people wouldn't do. Although, for her, it might actually be kind of a pattern. Maybe it's not as inconsistent as we think. Still, we are going to ask, why would she do that? And I think she's telling us here that she's hungry, and she actually thinks that he must be hungry, otherwise why would he snatch her purse? I think she's assuming that he stole the purse or tried to steal the purse to get money because he's hungry, and she can really relate to that. We'll continue on. "I wanted a pair of blue suede shoes," said the boy. "Well, you didn't have to snatch my pocketbook to get some suede shoes," said Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones. "You could have asked me." "Ma'am?" The water dripping from his face, the boy looked at her. There was a very long pause. A very long pause. After he had dried his face, and not knowing what else to do, dried it again, the boy turned around, wondering what next. The door was open. He could make a dash for it down the hall. He could run, 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 run. The woman was sitting on the daybed. After a while, she said, "I were young once, and I wanted things I could not get."
There was another long pause. The boy's mouth opened. Then he frowned, but not knowing he frowned. The woman said, "Mm-hmm. You thought I was going to say but, didn't you? You thought I was going to say, but I didn't snatch people's pocketbooks. Well, I wasn't going to say that." Pause. Silence. "I have done things too which I would not tell you, son, neither tell God if he didn't already know. So, you sit down while I fix us something to eat. You might run that comb through your hair so you will look presentable." Did you notice any contrasts and contradictions on this page? Where? Be sure to make a sticky note and write them down. Pause the video while you do that. When you're done, resume. I found one here. I think she's saying, or implying at least, that she would have given him money for fancy blue suede shoes and then he didn't have to steal her pocketbook. He could have just asked. I think she would have given it to him. I think that's not something I would do. If a kid walked up to me on the street and said, "Hi, can I have money for blue suede shoes?" I don't think I would say yes. And so I don't think many people would, not if I didn't know him. So I'm wondering, why did she do this? And then she tells us a little bit more about herself. She gives us a little bit of explanation about how she did things when she was young that she didn't necessarily agree with. And so that might be part of the puzzle. We're making inferences about her, and we don't necessarily know what the answer is. And as we go through the text, we're looking for more and more support to see that if our inferences or our predictions are correct. I'm going to read this section of text, and then I want you to pause and see if you found any contrasts and contradictions on the page and make a sticky note for them if you did. In another corner of the room behind a screen was a gas plate and an icebox. Mrs. Jones got up and went behind the screen. The woman did not watch the boy to see if he was going to run now, nor did she watch her purse, which he had left behind on the daybed. But the boy took care to sit on the far side of the room where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner of her eye if she wanted to. He did not trust the woman not to trust him, and he did not want to be mistrusted now. "Do you need somebody to go to the store?" asked the boy. "Maybe get some milk or something?" "Don't believe I do," said the woman, "unless you just want sweet milk yourself. I was going to make cocoa out of this canned milk I got here." "That will be fine," said the boy. She heated some lima beans and ham she had in the icebox, made the cocoa, and set the table. The woman did not ask the boy anything about where he lived, or his folks, or anything else that would embarrass him. Instead, as they ate, she told him about her job in a hotel beauty shop that stayed open late, and what the work was like, and how all kinds of women came in and out, blondes, redheads, and Spanish. Then she cut him a half of her 10-cent cake. "Eat some more, son," she said. When they were finished eating, she got up and said, "Now, here, take this $10 and buy yourself some blue suede shoes. And next time, do not make the mistake of latching onto my pocketbook, nor nobody else's, because shoes come by devilish like that will burn your feet. I got to get my rest now, but I wish you would behave yourself, son, from here on in." Okay, the story's not quite done, but I want you to stop and note any contrasts and contradictions you found, and answer the question, why? Why did Mrs. Jones, or why did the boy, Roger, behave that way? She led him down the hall to the front door and opened it. "Good night. Behave yourself, boy," she said, looking out into the street. The boy wanted to say something else other than, "Thank you, ma'am," to Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones, but he couldn't do so as he turned at the barren stoop and looked back at the large woman in the door. He barely managed to say, "Thank you," before she shut the door, and he never saw her again. Okay, jot down any last contrasts and contradictions and ask why. When you're done, you're going to look for patterns across your sticky notes. Do you see the same kind of contrast and contradiction coming up? Was there any pattern to the behavior of Roger or Mrs. Jones? Maybe ways in which they're kind of consistently different from what we'd expect them to be. If so, maybe they're just like that. Maybe that's a character trait that they've got. What do you think Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones' actions show us about her character? What kind of person is she? And what were her motivations for her actions towards Roger? Why did she act that way? If you have a partner that you're working with, turn and talk to them about the Post-its that you made and what you think about Mrs. Jones. All right, Ravens, you can go back to your independent reading now. And as you begin to read, please be alert to contrasts and contradictions. And when you see a character saying or doing or feeling something that's the opposite of what they've done in the past, or what you do or other characters might do, you should stop and ask yourself, why is the character doing or feeling that? You should then try and answer that question based on the clues that you have already from the text. You can make an inference about the character, their traits, or their motivation, or you can make a prediction about what they're going to do or what's going to happen in the story. And jot that down and keep reading. Happy reading!